Death be not proud.
You smell that, Internet? That's arrogance coming back to the world of Kings of War tactics and tacticia. Today we are going to be discussing the Orc Army. What happened? Were they just put in there for fan service cause boobs or what?
Just for the boobs.
Just for the boobs? Even though orcs don't have boobs. Orcs to me are always genderless. So that means they come out of holes in the ground. That means they are plant people. Anybody who says otherwise is wrong. So what's your general consensus on the orc list? Because I made a list, as you can see here. I have a big list of at least... Uh-oh. Is there 7 no-nos about the... There are 7 no-nos about the orcs.
So my overall general feel for this, and this might be because I come from Warhammer, is that the orcs need some form of little guys to kick around in front of them. To act as some form of, give them bows, give them just tons of bodies to add extra chaff in the way, but it feels to me that they're lacking something. And in your notes that we're going to be discussing, you mentioned a couple of those things that they could be missing.
I'm mentioning a couple of the things that the Orc Army is lacking in terms of things that Kings of War armies need to be successful. Orcs do not excel in any of the categories whatsoever. They don't excel in any of the categories.
So what are those categories, first of all?
In order for an Orc Army to be, in order for an army in Kings of War to be successful, they need to have 4 things. They all need to, or they need to have 2 of those 4 things. The undead at least have 2 of those 4 things. They need to have shooting.
Okay.
They need to have damage output. Again, one weakness that everything that that you're going to take will almost undoubtedly hit on a 4. Speed. The entire army lacks speed. You have no speed whatsoever. And then wounds, staying power. You don't have a lot of it. And so we're going to break down the meat of this topic, and we're just going to start with number 1, the Orc Axe Hordes. Too weak nerve-wise. Points too high for Nerve 2022. I don't care if that's the standard nerve for a horde. I really don't care. If you want to wax intellectual on the subject there, I will punch you in the mouth. No shit, I'll be the guy out in the parking lot punching people in the mouth. Zombies have 2022. There are a lot of, what is it? What else? Name one other thing that has 2022.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember the nerve values, but what does it compare with the Kingdom of Men shield wall, which is what everyone tries to compare crap to?
Oh, is that what everybody...
That's like considered the basic, even though it's kind of weak.
Here, I got you.
So the shield wall is going to be at 2022 for 165 points.
For 165 points.
Hitting on 4s, wounding on 4s. You can also give them foot guard, which are... Oh, foot guard.
The foot guard are way better. They got 2021. Now, you're talking about orcs. Orcs are supposed to be in a fleshy abundance. And this is the other point that I'm making to the nerve being too low, because that almost requires you to take the war drum, not to mention the flagger. Alright, so there's 3 drops just for your first unit. This is a weakness. This doesn't help you, this is a weakness. The very first unit you buy for your Orc Army is going to cost you 335 points. It's because all of a sudden, the war drum, the flagger, they're required. No, end of the story. So I think that the nerve needs to be bumped up. And when I say nerve needs to be bumped up, that's not going to break the game. That will not break the game. Simply because Kings of War has a history of being Jewy McJewerton face with the hit points. They are too chintzy cheap with hit points. And it's just, I'm sick of it. We need to fix it. So
one thing with that, with the fact that you have to bring in, you're going to have your standard axe horde.
Yes.
You're going to have a war drum, then you're going to have a flagger. That already limits, that's 300 and whatever points.
The 335.
That limits your army already a little bit, where you start getting all orc armies being identical.
Exactly. All orc armies being identical. What's the move on the war drum?
War drum has movement of 5.
Movement of 5. If the war drum was moving of 7 or something, maybe Like once the cavalry charge and they let loose, it's see you later, dude. It's bad news bears for those guys if they don't break whatever they're charging. Fix the Orc Axe Hordes. Leave the points at 205 or lower them at their current point cost to 180. I look at the and I get that from the slave orcs. They're 150 points and they've got nerfed 2022. They have one less defense and then they have yellow bellied. However, they're 150 points. I can bring 3 of those, and there's my MSU for my entire army. Right? It's not multiple. I could use them as MSU if I wanted to. I'm not going to be out of law.
It kind of, we were discussing this before we started the video, that when you're matching up your axe horde to a slave orc or a heavy slave orc army for the abyssal dwarves, it doesn't really match up. You have more or less the same
stat line,
but
your defenses are lower. That's it.
And the evil dwarves are going to end up killing the orcs.
Yes, you don't outnumber anything, and one strength that the orcs need is wounds, and they should outnumber their opponents to a certain extent, but they don't. And when I look at it, and whenever I play an army for Kings of War, I always look to see how well will that army do without allies, and that's where it comes in here. So I'd say you got nerve at you leave them at 205, or if they're 180 points for 2022, but you go up to 22-24. The Revenants have 24. They're Fearless 24, which is decent on a horde of Revenants. Mm-hmm. You can actually make that function. It's functional at 24. You have to devote 2.5 turns to kill it if you're shooting at it. And then if you bring in the War Drum, which is optional, and you bump them up to 24, 26...
They're going to be very difficult to take off the field.
They're going to be very difficult to take off the field, but still you're putting down 335 points to do that to the first unit. And, I don't see why one army can't just excel in having more hit points than their opponents. Mm-hmm. Whereas everybody, in like tournament play, last tournament I went to, I did encounter some of the armies that I thought I'd see. I knew I was going to see dwarves. I knew I was going to see elves. I thought I might see Varangar, but I thought I was going to see Basileans and the Brotherhood. But again, though, that wasn't in their meta. But at a 24-26 on 2 hordes at 205 points with the War Drum and the Flagger or whatever, just make them excel in a category. If it's hit points, orcs excel in hit points, but they don't excel in much anything else. And we're going to get into this having two hordes on that isn't overpowered. Between the 2 units, that's only 52 hit points on the field. And also last little note I have there. It also would give rise to predictability again, which is a weakness because every orc army is all of a sudden going to have its standard loadout of War Drum, Flag Guy, Axe Horde within the War Drum proximity.
Do you think it would be better to drop the points, keep the nerve the same, over raising or keep the points the same and raising the nerve?
I say raise the points and leave the points at 205 simply because they need to excel. Yeah. And they need to excel at something.
You could get rid of the predictability potentially if you kept the nerve low, so it's still not necessarily the best thing to bring.
It's not, yeah. But like I said, the higher hit points, the War Drum becomes a choice, not a must, and that's what that's about. The next thing that it also brings us is the Orc Crudger is too weak nerve-wise for the points cost. For 15 points more, the Troll Bruiser with Inspiring Gem was a way better general than the Orc Crudger on foot. We're talking about an Orc war boss. We're talking about what I perceive to be the embodiment of brute aggression. For 130 points, his nerve is what? 10-12?
Yeah, 10-12.
Really?
No, it's 12-14.
12-14, okay. It's about as good, and yet every single thing that I'm about to mention here I think the elf is better than this, but the elven general, the ogre captain, the bruiser, the dwarf king all have 13, 15, and they're all rocking around the same points cost. But for whatever reason, the orc is weaker. For whatever reason, he shouldn't be.
Let me ask you this: going back to the war drum, do you think just making the war drum have additional buffs to it could potentially?
It could. One thing that the army lacks is inspiring presences. With the exception of the flagger and the crudgers, those are your only inspiring presences. So it's the army's kind of weak with that. You've got to drop 130 bones or 50 bones somewhere to get an inspiring presence. I racked my brain 3 times when I made the list that fought you, because sometimes I only ended up with 2 inspiring presences. And the whole...
And you weren't able to stretch out your inspiring presence very much.
No, I wasn't.
You just had it right in the very center. And
that chariot had to be right in the very center. It was, or it was going to be the wizard right there in the very center. And I needed the chariot where he was. And so it was sacrifices. This army has to make sacrifices all the time. So what I'm saying is you leave him at 130 points. He's got 6 attacks to start. He's got the nerve 13, 15. And then you give him the option to buy the 7th. And take away the stupid lightning bolt too. I mean, come on. I am never... Okay, you've seen my channel. You see how bad I roll. I am never going to make lightning 2 work worth a shit for me.
What about making the flagger able to take the stupid zappy goblin thing?
The zappy goblin thing,
on
the
flagger.
broomstick?
Yeah.
Or
no, the goblin zappy sneak. Put that so that you can get that on your flagger.
That's just the start. But
it could potentially bring up the shooting, which we're going to get to.
Yeah,
at some point,
yeah.
So.
That's just the start, but I think the option to buy the 7th attack, the nerve of 13, 15, him being kind of like something you don't want to mess with on the field because he is, again, an orc war boss. This guy's supposed to go across the field, and he literally just doesn't do it for me. I mean, I almost, when I was putting together that's why I opted for the Crudger on the Gore Chariot, because at least I got a regiment standard almost of what do you call it? Nerve.
Nerve, yeah.
And, I'll take Thunderous 2 and Crushing 2. As for, the next category, we're going to go into, fight wagons on these guys. And, again, these are supposed to be the stars of your shows. Now, Mantic has made models for the Chariots and the fight wagons. And people aren't taking them because they're so bad. They really are. When I think about awesome unit, the Herd, the Stampede has an 1820 on its nerve. It hits on 4s. It's got a ridiculous... I forgot how many attacks it has. It's got a ridiculous...
It has a lot of them.
It has a lot of attacks. The Herd's in this book too?
Oh, no. The Forces of Nature are. I should have brought my other
The Stampede is just kind of where the Orc fight wagons and chariots should be on the Horde level. But, again, I have giants. This thing wins every single time because it's 190 points. I've got Strider, Fury, and Crushing 3. Not to mention, I can bring Trolls. Knock knock, who's there? Trolls and Giants win fight wagons and chariots. You suck last time I checked. Nerve, way too low for what they are. You can literally put 7 shots into this first turn, kill it. You could put and if you really wanted to be a dick, you could put 14 wounds on this thing first turn with shooting, with an elf army or a Kingdoms of Men army, or the Brotherhood army if you have 2 hordes of archers and 2 siege artilleries. Just gone. They're gone.
They do have a
260 points.
Decent defense compared to the rest of the army.
They do have they have a defense 5,
yeah.
but that's not hard to get around.
And what's sad about this is that the fight wagons are some really cool looking models.
They're cool looking models. Semantic, this is a tip for you. Make them good so people buy the models, because if they were good, you bet your ass I'm buying the models. I'm all over those models like white on rice. I'm putting them into goblin armies and shit. But I would like to see him do a favor. Here are the two big, they're the two big flavors of and they're too expensive. They're underpowered and way too expensive. I think I think that the regiments should be 13, 15 on the chariots themselves, but I think go higher. I think if you get rid of the horde and you get rid of the regiment, the horde option for both of the units, and you go 16, 18 for the chariots, and you give them bows, I think they would be way better with 12 attacks. Because it doesn't make any sense that your chariots are the same as werewolves in a regiment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have quite a bit. They do have quite a bit of attacks going forward.
No, I was talking about the regiment of chariots with 9 attacks. That's just like, okay.
Yeah, it's not. Overall, it's not that good, but they don't have bows. Are there any other chariots in the game or large cavalry?
The Twilight can have them.
Okay, so they have their abyssal.
They have
riders, whatever they're called.
They have their chariot, their chariots. The elves have
Varangar,
chariots. The ogres have chariots.
And the ogres don't have chariots.
They do.
Or sorry, they don't have a ranged weapon.
No, they don't.
How do these compare to the ogre chariots?
The ogre chariots I think have a higher nerve, if I'm not mistaken.
Ogres. Where are my ogres?
I'm at King of Men. Here we go.
Flipping through the book like mad now, trying to
find.
Ogres go after the. There we go.
Okay. Ogre chariots are 15, 17.
Yes.
And they're 2-6. They're 5 points extra. They're crushing 1, thunderous 2. However, they have 24 attacks. They have 12 attacks. Their regiment is what I bring. For 170 points with the 12 attacks, that's not bad. And I bring those all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I bring those all the time, a regiment of ogre chariots. It's not bad for what they are.
Just step up the nerve. One more on that.
They just got one more nerve, and I've already heard that chariots are kind of like underpowered for what they are and everything, but I was the regiments maybe 13, 15 on the chariots, and then the horde should be at like 20, 22. Mm-hmm. But as always, I would opt for trolls, or better yet, I would ally with ogres just to bring warriors. To avoid bringing the crap that is fight wagons and chariots, because I want that 15, 17 nerve. I want to hit on 3s. I want to have consistent damage output. 30 attacks on the fight wagons is good, but you're never going to see combat if they shoot them.
So what are your thoughts of taking, instead of taking this horde of trolls right here, just bringing in an allied unit of the ogres?
It's just 10 more points.
Mm-hmm.
It's just 10 more points.
Because the other thing that you could do if you bring in these ogres is then you could have like a couple small. You could bring in up to 4 small units of red goblins as chaff.
Yeah, I could.
But again, that's getting away from our.
That's getting away from the original purpose of this video, which is you've got to try to make ogres stand on their feet. And I'm not saying that they can't be played well. I could have a little bit of success with orcs, but they're not going to be the army that I take to a tournament, ever. I am never taking orcs to a tournament. And hats off to anybody who does. There was one guy who played them well at Adepticon. He placed 6 places better than I did with orcs, but 625 points of his army was goblin, not orcs. And then, when I compare the Goblin faction to the Orcs, the Goblins are way better. They have wounds. They have shooting. They have
speed. You're stupid.
They have speed. They have speed. Not to mention, I have characters that, like the Red Goblin bigots, that I can put on wolves, and I can get over to your deployment zone, and I can start disrupting your wizards. I could actually even maybe potentially kill your wizards. Or more importantly, I can kill your war machines. Mm-hmm. We all see my success rate with that.
But you don't have anything fast to get behind that I really care about with this army.
I have nothing fast that will get behind.
But about the only thing fast that you have that could get behind is your orc chariot. But if you do that, that gets rid of your inspiring.
That gets rid of my inspiring. I need my crudgers right where they are. It's not like I can, and I don't want to buy enough. And again, I don't want to spend the points on a crudger. 100 and what is that? It's 40 points for the wings of honey maze. 170 points for a crudger with wings. and just have him over there being a nuisance. I mean, sure, he'll kill wizards better than anything I can think of, but he's not with the army.
And so you're getting rid of one of your
inspiring presences to do that. So which brings me to point number 5: no speed. The cavalry is overpriced. Gore riders too overcosted for what they are. Again, if you go back to the Abyssal Dwarves, you're 130 points.
For which one?
For the slave Gore riders.
Yes, they're 130. And about the only thing that you're changing there is they also
they're yellow bellied and defense -1.
So here's a question I do have coming in with the speed, going into maneuverability.
Right.
They are all looking at your
nothing you have in this army is
ever,
nimble except for your individual.
Yeah, no nimble. But what about base sizes? How does that affect the hordes? They're slightly bigger. Is that going to affect overall the maneuverability?
It does, and then it doesn't. Again, hordes already do change that footprint. You're only slightly larger than a man horde. Plus, orc models, the Mantic orc models I know, and the orc models that GW put out, they're already slightly bigger. Orcs are supposed to be bigger than people. So, and plus you want them on the 25mm bases because orcs have been on 25mm bases for 15 years, 20
and
years.
I'm not saying change that, but keep that in mind as they're doing the point values, that's going to create a larger space to charge into.
It does create a larger
Not
space
that we're
to
talking
charge
much.
into, and that's why I stress them maybe excelling in one category, which is hit points. If every orc horde had as many hit points as an orc legion, you've got something at least. The reason why an orc legion wouldn't have more than an orc horde is because they're probably way easier to hit with arrows. They're bigger. You're going to find your mark easier. You know.
Could you potentially just bring up the amount of damage output that they're doing and make them a glass cannon army in a sense?
You could potentially do that, but
would that be less changes than upping their high cap? Would that be less changes than the doing their nerve values?
Okay. So when I talk about changing anything in this game, that which you cannot change with the sentence, don't change it.
Your cat cut me.
I don't give a shit. Don't change it.
Okay.
So basically, you
could
up
change
the nerve.
everything by
It's
just upping
easier
the
to.
nerve.
It's just easier to up the nerve on the orcs. Try it for a month and then bring it down if you have to by one.
You could do an FAQ saying raise every single thing by 2
That's
points
a change that's way easier to do than going through and lowering points. Way easier. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, so you go down here, the Gore Riders again. When I look at like cavalry across the board, Kingdoms of Men cavalry, Elf cavalry,
Basilian cavalry.
Basilian cavalry, all the cavalry stats are 15, 17. Yours are 13, 15. The Kingdoms of Men cavalry is 14, 16. You don't even get a 14, 16. You're undernerved again for some reason.
Yeah.
And you're overcosted. Just because you hit on, and this is one of your only units that hit on 3s. And for 5 points more, I could take a horde of trolls or I could take giants. Again, Orc Cavalry here, a star player, models that they have made, and you're going to see them in every army. I know that Andrew Gale uses them, and he's an example of someone who plays Orcs well. I am not an example of someone who plays Orcs well. Again, but he has 2 units of them. I only have the 1. But again, why would I want 2 units of those when I could have 17, 19, 17, 19, 14, 17
and here goes
with regen.
Going back to what you were saying, with they have models for all these things. Mantic doesn't have models for giants.
Right.
I doubt they're ever going to make a model for, or eventually they might. There's too many other. You can get Bones model or ones for cheap. We all have. If we
everybody
play Orcs,
has
we
giants.
have leaders.
Yeah.
And so with that, they should be focusing on,
They should be focusing on the fight.
I don't want them to go and do, the whole Matt Ward, let's make all the new shiny Ultramarine crap super nice.
Yeah.
Like what they're doing. But at the same time, you have these Mantic models, let's make them good.
Yeah.
Or at least usable.
at least make them usable. And so for 5 extra points, you get the trolls with this, and you get the giant. Drop the points cost down to 160 and give them 14-16. Or keep them at their same points cost, and you give that cavalry elite.
Or vicious to maybe make, because elite and vicious end up coming up the same thing, and it gives a little bit more of the orc flavor to.
Yeah, I would give them. I would just give them elite to make sure that when they nail something, they're gonna nail it. They're gonna hit it hard. And then you'd probably see more Gore Rider lists, but again, that's very hard because you're slower than everybody else. Werewolves are gonna hit you first. Elves are gonna hit you first. Well, let's see here. Depending on the situation, dragons are gonna hit you. God, what else moves really quick?
Goblins are gonna hit you first.
Goblins are gonna probably hit you first, and with a nerve of 13-15, if they do 6 wounds, they can waver you like that. And it's not beyond the realm of possibility for a goblin Fleabag regiment to come in and do 6 wounds on a frontal charge, no less. So you're slow. You're not exceeding in the speed category. The only flight you have is the Orc Crudger. I don't know, can you even see that? Is this guy on the Wyvern, on the Wing Slasher, and he's 285. And again, he's
a big target for shooting.
He's a big target for shooting.
He doesn't have that much, because we're going back to the same thing that
you're going back to the being undernerved.
So you're going to be able to shoot it off.
You're going to be able to shoot it off, and you can bring the healing potion. Oh, I healed 2 wounds. Okay, next turn I'm dead. Okay, I only prolonged the inevitable by 1 dice.
And I can see them making a really awesome looking model for this off in the next little bit, so long as they don't make it look like the fat dragon that the elves have now.
I like that dragon.
I don't like that dragon.
There's
something simple about it, but
I like it because it's simple. I like it because that will take me an afternoon to paint. All right, that is an afternoon.
Did you see
all right, I like any model that takes an afternoon. Okay.
True, but they went from the skinny dragon, and then it went on the all Oreo milk diet. And
Oreo milk diet. There you go.
Ton of weight.
And with the low nerve on the cavalry, again, cavalry is supposed to be a periphery force. It's supposed to be out there away from the main body. So you not having an inspiring presence, now you've got to buy an additional flag guy, and you have to put flag guy on a gore to keep up with them. If you take a clutch of these guys, like I'm taking 3 units, I need flag guy now. And again, I'm slower than everybody else, so that really hurts. So the nerve should be higher on the cavalry, or keep everything the same and just give them elite, and that's something. But I mean, the star players, fight wagons, chariots, gore riders, they have their place, but again, they're being outshined by giants and trolls every single time.
And that goes with a lot of their other shiny stuff, is that the giants still end up being one of the best things in this list.
And the giants are, and that's a problem because they have the models and they have the technology to make these things takeable. Gore riders also move way too fast to be supported by a war drum. Again, if that charge comes up, let's say he did turn the flank of his dragon to kill something, to make sure it insta-died, and then for whatever reason, it remained. Well, it's nice knowing my cavalry, I'm sending them 16 inches out there. They're away from the war drum now. I mean, the war drum is good in theory. I mean, every army's going to have one, but again, it's one of those choices that you're kind of forced into having just to keep your axe hordes together. And bumping it up by 2, it helps. It helps to have that war drum, but I mean...
But it feels overall that the war drum is lacking a ton. We need to do something to the war drum. Maybe make it so that it acts kind of like a wizard, where it has additional buff spells that it can throw out.
Well, we're going to get into that. The thing that we're going to get to are the... other than skulks, we're going to get into them right now. Other than skulks, you have no shooting. You have no shooting in this army
Skulk.
whatsoever. Skulks have 8 attacks apiece. They hit on 5s. They have Vanguard, but they're not nimble. And that's where they come up short. If those things were nimble for their points cost, now you've got some firepower. Because now you have the element of your army that's supposed to be quick and nimble and agile. It can actually do its job a lot better if they were nimble.
That would allow a lot, because you used yours as
good as I could without nimble.
Yeah, you use them as chaff, so they're going up and they can position properly to start taking charges in a specific way to help set up the rest of your
exactly, and so the one thing they're good for, they're not good at. This is just going to be complaining about orcs the rest of the video. And what I noticed, because when I made my list that fought in the last battle report, I racked the hell out of my brain to make it. And with the models that I have, and I have a lot of orc models, I have I have 2,800 points worth of orcs without magic items. And I really racked my brain to make this list. And, each time I was coming up short. And so, yes, other than 1 to 2 units of skulks, the army has no shooting, because you're going to at least bring
You can always bring the zappy sneak.
The zappy
sneaks.
Oh boy, the zappy sneak. That's what I think. God, you might as well just go, I got nothing. Hey! I can see the cruncher there with his pompadour going, I got nothing. Yeah. Hey, Vinny. Tony's not gay, he's just creative. Alright? So the way you compensate for those inadequacies with the 2 units is that's only 16 shots. 16 shots is never going to ever be broken in your entire life. It's not going to do shit. Is give bows to the chariots, bump the chariots up to 12 attacks. Alright? And just leave them the same points and give them a little bit of nerve, but allow the orclings to throw stuff.
So, one thing where I was looking at something similar to this is with the salamanders, they have their fire or ember sprites.
Ember sprites, yeah.
They are 20 points more for a regiment. I don't know how many.
20 points more is 80 points.
Yeah, so it's an 80-point model, and then it has a breath attack.
It has a breath attack. It
has less total attack. So
I'm not even asking for a breath weapon.
Yeah.
I'm asking to be allowed to throw stuff. I'll stick with rocks, thank you. So if the I think the Orclings would be badass. I like the Orclings. I'm a fan of the Orclings. It sucks that they're irregular, because if I could have 5 units of Orclings act as my center, that's exactly what I'd bring every single time. The rest would be cavalry and orcs on Waverns.
You could potentially set up your army depending on how much. I don't think it would be the best thing.
No, it wouldn't be the best thing, because again, I'm limited to I have to have. I mean, once I take that's a character slot taken, and then once I take this, once I take the war drum, that's a monster slot taken. Mm-hmm. So, if they were actual orc troops and they weren't irregular, what I'm talking about right now,
your regiments and stuff.
I would bring them as hordes.
Yeah, okay.
And here, deal with that being my center, because if I get 2 units into you, they're going to be there the rest of the game until you get rid of them. So if the skulks had thrown weapons, that would be tremendous. That's just one more tool, because you're not. Chariots with the bows, skulks with the bows, and then orclings with thrown weapons. That gives you 3 units that shoot, and then. Give Lightning Bolt 4 to the God Speakers. Let them change out Fireball 9 for free with, and they do this for all the wizards. You can never swap for Lightning Bolt. At least do one thing for the orcs there. Oh, you can trade. Do something convenient. This is just one. I'm gonna have to make a Kings of War video about things that don't make sense in the game, and this is one of them. He's Fireball 9. You're never ever going to use Fireball 9 because by the time you come to grips with the enemy, you're going to be using Bane Chant. They
don't even have. I thought they did have the option for.
No, they don't even have
the option.
What their only options? Do they have the option for Wind Blast?
Bane Chant and Heal.
Bane Chant and Heal. Now the Heal thing would be awesome if you actually just had. Let's say you had Heal 4, and the inspiring gem. You don't. I mean, there are potential for synergies, and you don't even get them. The inspiring gem and heal 4. You could mob that guy with three hordes of trolls.
Mm-hmm.
Give one of the hordes. Because he would be like,
you wouldn't be able to get rid of the trolls because they'd be regenerating. You could heal them whenever you need to, and
you could heal one unit whenever you needed to, but then you could give another regiment the healing brew as well, and that would be a force to be reckoned with. That would be a synergy that you would have that would work almost every single time.
But with that, those are also irregular, so you'd have to bring in a horde of...
you have to bring in a horde to get the 3 regiments, but who cares? True. Who cares? Then you park a war drum next to them and be like, come at me, bro. Mm-hmm. You know, and... at least it's something. At least they're excelling in staying power.
Yeah.
There you go. They don't even excel in staying power, because you can kill this in one turn with 14 shots.
Could have thought for the war drum, just give it heal.
Give it heal. That would help.
I'm not saying that would fix anything, but I think the war drum needs to have a range of 12, not a range of 6.
Exactly.
I think it needs to have something else, some other bonus that it can give out.
Inspiring! There you go.
But would anyone ever bring a flag at that point?
Who cares? Probably. Probably. You don't know. Mm-hmm. If you got 50 extra points...
There are 80 points for the war drum, right?
It's 80 points and it's not inspiring, yeah. And so, and again, lightning, you'll never use fireball with the Orc Wizard. Because you're almost going to always need the Bane chant.
Could you use the if you had a bunch of Gore riders and you had a God Speaker on a Gore, could you then potentially use the fireball? But at the same time, you're probably going to be
using the Bane chant
to get your guys into combat.
It's a close combat army with no staying power. You see, that's the thing there. You got a close combat army with no staying power, and the units that should be good aren't good, and the units that are good are your giants and your trolls, and they're the MVPs, and it's just doesn't make any sense.
So should we just call this the troll army with little small orcs helping? With
a couple of orcs. It should be the troll giant army with a couple of small orcs. So this brings me to my 7th point. The Crudger on the Slasher, and I have a little smiley face. It's a frowny face.
It's a very sad looking.
Has lower nerve than a giant, and its points cost 285. That's another thing that doesn't make any sense.
235.
It's 285. It's 285. Are you going to tell me you're not going to put wings on that thing?
You gotta have the wings.
You gotta have the wings on it.
I want to make it a really shitty goblin one, though.
I want to make it a really... Yeah, he could be a really shitty unit that you could just parade around there that's going to get shot turn 2.
But you can... Oh, and you can't even add the Zappy Sneak.
You can't even add the Zappy Sneak. Or the
attacks. That's my biggest complaint.
Nope, you can't even add the attack sneak on that. 10 attacks. It's like
he needs some form of shooting.
He doesn't even have the breath weapons. So the way they at least gave him fury. They at least gave him fury. But the whole thing is at least give him 12 attacks. Give him more attacks than every other flying monster.
Why not Zoidberg? Give him the Zappy Sneak.
Because I know lightning. Yeah, lightning bolt too. It's the greatest thing ever.
Could you make Could you give him lightning bolt 3 and make it good, or was that still just asking too much on that?
You were asking too much.
But okay, no.
You were asking too much, and
The problem is you compare that to the goblins. You can get 3 of the goblins with their goblin wizards with their lightning bolts. How many points is that for the goblin ones?
This is the first time.
That just shows how it...
45 points and you get lightning bolt 3.
Yeah. So you can just spam
Which is usually... Yeah, people spam... Mm-hmm. The guy, Jesse from, what do you call it? I'm not saying that channel. Mastercrafted. I was thinking of another channel. He had 3 goblin wizards in his army.
That seems to be a standard there.
Yeah.
It's just in the same way that every Orc army is always going to have a war drum, and then at least a horde of the...
So, so one FAQ that could go out that would help today for the Orcs is just give the God Speaker inspiring. Because here's another thing, that doesn't make sense in Kings of War. Necromancers aren't inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to be. That's a huge weakness for the undead that I found because I'm trying to revamp my undead army, and it's a little hard because again I always have to spend. I could buy a Lich King for way more points, but I can't. And he's got the inspiring.
Use all the spells.
I'm only going to use some of the spells.
Yeah.
I'm going to use Bane Champ 3, and I'm going to use Surge 12.
So let me ask you this on that FAQ comment. Would you rather have the +2 nerve across the board, or inspiring from the God Speaker?
I take the +2 nerve across the board because they need to excel in something. And like the 4 categories: no shooting, no staying power, no damage output. Your damage output on an Axe Horde, without like magic items, on a toughness 5 on a defense 5 opponent is 6.5, or is it lower?
It was 6.5.
It's 6.5.
That's the math hammer. When we went through and did it, we got 8.
When we went through it, and we did 3 dice rolls before the game began, 3 cup rolls. The highest damage output we got out of 3 times was 10.
But you got 6 one of the times, and you got 8 the other.
I got 6, 8, and then 10. So, I mean, if you wanted to, you could fix it so that Orcs are going to hit on 3s, but that's way too much of a dramatic, what do you call it?
It would be a change that would potentially
It would be a change that would break the game, of course. Everything breaks.
So, what I'm seeing...
If you're on the rules committee, what I'm saying would break the game. Anything that I could recommend breaks the game.
What I'm thinking is, are there any other armies in the game that are glass cannons?
That are glass cannons? Herd are, but because I played Herd in the tournament, and the guy was even though I beat that player, I beat him, like almost tabled him, and he did play better in the tournament, at least to get 3rd. I came in underneath the Herd player, and why are you not going to bring 2 Stampedes? Why are you not going to bring Eagles? He's got speed. He's got... And not to mention, he's got, what do you call it? He's got Minotaurs, so he's not... but they are kind of a glass cannon army, They don't have a lot of shooting, but they excel in things. They've got speed, and they've got staying power.
And that's one thing that I'm looking at for Orcs is... you obviously don't want to make them an exact copy of the Herd, or you don't want to make them an exact copy of something else.
Yeah. So
but I would have something ever so slightly.
I would just kind of make the Orcs like a brick wall. Okay, everything can be melee 4. Who cares? You're not going to break an Orc unit in no less than 3 turns. That's where the strength can come in for the army.
Would that make them feel too much like dwarves, for example? Where the dwarves are really... But dwarves are even more tough than that. Yeah,
dwarves are even more tough than that. No, it wouldn't. It's because, Orcs have their own little flavors. They've got the... dwarves don't have chariots. Dwarves have 1 unit of cavalry that they can buy. They don't have any monstrous infantry.
And I'm more just saying that out of devil's advocate on that one. To see what things could potentially be changed to make the Orcs...
Is just raise the nerve values by 2 on everything. And I think you've just fixed the army. Because then they have the staying... Because if they're 22, 24, they're not going anywhere for 3 turns, almost guaranteed. If you are going to shoot an Orc unit off the table, you're going to have to focus everything you've got for at least 2 turns. And if you roll bad, you roll bad, and that's the game.
Maybe something we need to do is...
So we've come up with some kind of a list. I think that I need to give you a kind of a list or some synergies in the Orc army. There is some good. It's not a lot of good, but there is some saving graces. So for the general skeleton of your army, A generic skeleton is going to be 2 axe hordes. 205 points, you know the drill there. 3 hordes of trolls. Now these guys are going to be as a division together. They are always together. I think they can only work together. So if you start putting down troll hordes, they might have to commit to something. And, you know, you haven't put down any chaff yet, so, you know, if you put down all 3 of your troll hordes together, he's going to get a series. He's either going to deploy his war machines across from you, which is what you want, which is something that you can predict for and prepare for. And he's going to put his shooting across from you, which is even better. So you put down the 3 troll hordes together, one of which will have the healing brew. The next thing you're going to take is the regiment of gore riders. I only have 1 regiment, and they have the fog. And the fog says they don't die in 1 turn of shooting. And then you bring a Crudger on the gore chariot with the Loot of Insatiable Darkness, so he can give Bane Chant to the axe hordes. Mm-hmm. And then you bring a flagger with the healing charm. I'm going somewhere with the flagger with the healing charm. He's going to go over by the trolls every single time. You're going to bring the God Speaker with Bane Chant and heal, not to mention Shroud of the Saint, so he's got heal 5. He's going to go over by the trolls. So, and then you're going to bring a War Drum, of course. Now, everything that I mentioned in a 2,000 point army, this is 1695. Again, I haven't had time to work the kinks out. This has been a really long video. But, you know, like I said, if you were to bring the nerve values of the orcs up by 2, they would at least excel in one thing, which is hit points. Elves excel in being elite, and, you know, I mean, people complain about that. I don't find it broken, particularly that they have better shooting than everybody else. You know, but one thing that what I was thinking, I was going to ask you, would it be cool if dwarves, Abyssal Dwarves and Dwarves hated Twilightkin, if there was just a special rule that said, never trust an elf? This is theory. That
Twilightkin and also the regular elves?
Yeah.
Or just any model that,
yeah.
Maybe
it says never trust an elf. So when they sit down from against Twilightkin or they sit down against elves, they have elite.
Do they need that, though?
I just think it would be fun.
It would be a cool little...
and that's a flavor, but...
Yeah, that would be a fun little flavor.
Something to talk about in the next theory video, which I want to do pretty soon here.
Okay.
But I think that the regen step on the trolls, if you roll decent, especially after taking a lot of damage from shooting, coupled with the healing, will get you across the field to mash up things, and you can support that sweeping in with the axe hordes.
And that's everything. 3 very, very strong hordes going in there with your trolls that are not going to die, so that gets the idea of specializing in hit points that we were talking about. Yeah. And really gives that flavor to the...
I mean, it sucks that your entire army isn't orcs, it's mostly trolls, but, you know, I've never had to rack my brain so hard for an army. Mm-hmm. And because pretty much like a lot of the other armies out there, like Basileans Brotherhood, they're no-brainers. You got a lot of good choices. I mean, they even have monstrous infantry on the Brotherhood. The Herd, you got no-brainers with the Stampedes, even though they're irregular. I'm going to want 2 Stampedes every single time. I'm going to want 2 regiments of Eagles, because when you can, take cheap flight. If you know, whenever you can. If it's 170 points for something that flies, take it, you know. But with chaff, I'm gonna go up another. I'm almost gonna be there with points, and so it's kind of a weak army still. I think you could probably get away with it being maybe one of those being a troll bruiser rather than another horde of troll. Another horde of
that could be inspiring. That could go up with your trolls.
Again, you could save a few extra points by going with the regiments of Orclings rather than the vanguarding rather than the skulks.
I still like the skulks just to give you some amount of annoying shooting.
That's 16 shots is not annoying.
Yeah.
But you can always take the zappy sneak.
Yeah, I was gonna say my one complaint that I see about this skeleton, the skeleton list that we made. Yeah. There's no sneak, the zappy sneak.
Speaking of skeletons, check out the Kickstarter list. the Kickstarter link in the description. That's a link to his Kickstarter for halfling skeletons. And as you know, YouTube has many features you could use to interact with me. You could like the video, dislike the video, comment, or subscribe. But until then, keep fighting and stay metal, my friends. And do your best with the orcs, because I really have a tough time.